And so he called himself an objective idealist. And that means that everything is mind, but that doesn't mean that mind produces reality. Reality is there. But everything is mind. Mind is what makes up reality. And this has a lot of implications. For instance, one of the things that it means is that when you look at the world, including the physical world, that has the qualities of mind. And that means that everything has something of freedom in it and free choice, which to us sounds really strange.
Yeah.
But he calls this a kind of pure chance of free choice in nature itself. We recognize free choice in ourselves and in human beings as obviously there. We know what it feels like. But to think, what is the free choice of an iron atom, for instance? He would take that subject seriously. And what he would say is that it has a little tiny bit of free choice, but it's so small that from moment to moment it remains the same. It can't choose to be different from moment to moment, not very much. We can choose to be very different from moment to moment. I could say, okay, I'm sitting here, but I might just say, well, look, I think I'll leave, you know.
You could.
But because I have free will.
You could walk out of this interview right now if you chose.
If I chose.
Yeah.
And that means the degree of freedom that I have or that you have, and to a lesser degree, but still there, that animals have, is much greater than as you go down the scale of nature to what we would call matter, inert matter, like an iron atom. Their freedom is very small, but it's still there. And this is what is crucially important. So he believes that, for instance, the laws of nature are habits of action that have built up over time, that they're not imposed and given from the outside.
They're not absolute.
They're not absolute. And that the
that
laws
sounds like a very modern idea.
Yeah, right. It is, and he's influenced modern people quite a bit.
Yeah.
So he would say that in some indefinite time in the future, the laws of nature will be somewhat different because the habits will have changed.
I did an interview with Rupert Sheldrake, the biologist who wrote a book on just that subject.
Okay.
As if it was his contribution to human knowledge, and you're saying, a century earlier, Peirce had the same idea.
Oh, yes. And this affected James, too. James took that on to a certain degree, that idea that laws are not laws, they're habits. And because reality is free, we can form habits. That is, we choose the next moment of existence. Everything chooses the next moment of existence. It gathers together what it is in this situation and chooses what it's going to be next. So like I said, I could choose to leave.
Yeah.
The iron atom is not going to be able to choose to be something other than iron atom qualities. It's so small that iron really, we say, is consistent.
Yeah.
We think it's determined that it'll never change, but it can. So that iron might be slightly different at some infinite period in the future.
What you're saying reminds me of a principle that was enunciated by one of my mentors, a person I don't think you probably knew, Arthur M. Young, who was a cosmologist.
I knew of him. I'm of him. Yeah.
Inventor of the Bell helicopter. He wrote a great book called The Reflexive Universe.
Yes.
And one of the points he made is that the photon follows a principle in physics called the principle of least action. If a photon has to go from point A, or let's put it this way, if a photon goes from point A to point B, it gets there in the quickest possible way. But that's not the same as being determined, because like water may flow down a hillside and it's predetermined which way it goes according to the principle of least resistance. But the principle of least action is different than the principle of least resistance. It seems to imply teleology, that the photon is choosing somehow to get to where it ends up in the quickest way, not the easiest way.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I'm glad you mentioned the magical word teleology.
Yeah.
Teleology means there's a goal and an aim. And if you're going to have an aim, you're talking about mind.
Yeah.
Something is aiming, something has a goal, and that teleology defines The fact of teleology defines evolution. Why we have evolution is because things have a teleology and they go somewhere in the next moment and the next moment and they develop.
Another word for teleology would be purpose.
Yes, purpose.
And that is something that mechanistic, deterministic science tries to rule out.
Well, that's true.